Imagine this. It's late at night. You're driving home after having a few drinks. You're not paying much attention, maybe even a bit tired. Suddenly, something or someone collides with your car. Your heart races. The impact is horrifying. But instead of calling for help, you do something unthinkable. You drive away with the body still stuck in your windshield. This isn't fiction. It's the true story of Chante Mallard and Gregory Biggs, a story so disturbing it shocked the nation. What happened that night didn't just challenge our understanding of morality, it highlighted a terrifying truth. Sometimes, the real monsters are the ones we least expect. How could something so tragic happen? More importantly, how does someone allow such horror to unfold without a shred of guilt? The story you're about to hear is one of cruelty, indifference, and a total disregard for human life. This is the chilling tale of what happens when a person's darkest instincts take over. On the night of October 26, 2001, 25-year-old Chante Mallard was driving home from a party in Fort Worth, Texas. Mallard wasn't just tipsy, she was intoxicated. She had mixed alcohol with ecstasy, a dangerous cocktail that impaired her judgment and slowed her reactions. Mallard's car swerved down the highway in the early hours of the morning, the city streets eerily quiet except for the low hum of passing vehicles. At that same moment, Gregory Biggs, a 37-year-old man struggling with homelessness and mental illness, was walking along the side of the road. Biggs had spent years in and out of shelters, battling both his circumstances and his inner demons. That night, he was trying to make his way through life's darkest chapter, one step at a time. But neither of them would reach their intended destination. At around 3 a.m., Chante Mallard's car struck Gregory Biggs with brutal force. The impact was catastrophic. Biggs' body was flung onto the hood of her car, shattering the windshield. But here's the truly horrifying part. Gregory Biggs wasn't killed instantly. He was alive, conscious, and trapped in a living nightmare. His legs hung out from the front of the car, while his upper body remained inside the windshield, blood pouring from his injuries. He could still feel the pain, still plead for help.
Help me!
What happened next is the stuff of nightmares. Mallard didn't stop. She didn't call for help. Instead, she continued driving, with Biggs stuck in her windshield dying. She didn't pull over. She didn't check if he could be saved. She drove, in a state of panic, all the way home. The distance between the crash site and Mallard's house was just 2 miles. But to Gregory Biggs, it must have felt like an eternity, a desperate fight for survival that was slipping away by the second. When Chante Mallard pulled into her driveway, Gregory Biggs was still alive. He was breathing, but only just. His life was hanging by a thread. And yet, Mallard's reaction was one of indifference. She parked her car inside the garage, shut the door, and left Biggs trapped in the windshield. His muffled cries for help echoed in that enclosed space, but they fell on deaf ears. Instead of calling an ambulance, instead of alerting the authorities, Chante Mallard walked inside her house. She locked the door behind her and left Biggs alone to die. He remained there for hours, slowly succumbing to his injuries. According to forensic experts, Biggs might have survived the initial crash if he had received medical attention in time. His death wasn't immediate. It was slow, agonizing, and preventable. The official autopsy report later revealed that Gregory Biggs had died from a combination of shock and blood loss. He didn't have to die that way, but Mallard's inaction made it inevitable. For those hours, Biggs was alone in that garage, his life slowly draining away as Chante Mallard went about her evening, trying to forget the horror she had just created. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the truth forever. Days passed, and guilt, or perhaps fear, began to gnaw at her. It wasn't long before Mallard confided in a few close friends, admitting to the unspeakable crime she had committed. But instead of pushing her to confess or seeking help, they did the unimaginable. They helped her cover it up. Together, they devised a plan to dispose of Gregory Biggs' body as if it were nothing more than an inconvenience. In a chilling act of cruelty, they removed Biggs' lifeless body from the windshield and dumped it in Cobb Park, a nearby recreational area. His body was left there, discarded like trash. Mallard and her friends went on with their lives, hoping the gruesome discovery would never be traced back to them. But no crime stays hidden forever. Gregory Biggs' body was discovered in Cobb Park by a passerby a few days later. The police initially suspected that he had been the victim of a hit-and-run. After all, hit-and-runs weren't uncommon, especially when it came to homeless individuals who were often invisible to society. But something about Biggs' case was different. The condition of his body didn't add up. His injuries suggested more than just a roadside accident. They hinted at something far darker. Despite their best efforts, the police struggled to find leads. Months went by, and the case began to grow cold. But in February 2002, nearly 4 months after the incident, the truth began to unravel. Chante Mallard had made a mistake, a fatal one. She had boasted about the incident at a party, drunkenly confessing the crime to a friend. Horrified by what they heard, the friend came forward to the police. It didn't take long for investigators to connect the dots. When they arrived at Chante Mallard's home, the evidence was impossible to ignore. Her car, still parked in the garage, had a shattered windshield and bloodstains, physical proof of the horrific event that had transpired. Confronted with the evidence, Mallard confessed to the crime. She admitted to hitting Gregory Biggs, driving him home lodged in the windshield, and leaving him to die. Her chilling recounting of the night left the police and the public in shock. In 2003, Chante Mallard faced trial for the murder of Gregory Biggs. The courtroom was filled with a sense of disbelief as the prosecution detailed the gruesome events of that October night. The image of Gregory Biggs, stuck in the windshield, pleading for his life, haunted everyone who heard it. The prosecution argued that this wasn't just a case of panic, it was cold-blooded neglect. They laid out the chilling facts. Had Mallard sought help, Biggs might still be alive. Instead, her choice to leave him sealed his fate. The defense tried to argue that Mallard had panicked and was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, impairing her judgment. But the jury wasn't swayed. The fact that she had time to reflect, that she had confided in friends, and even sought help to cover up the crime, proved that this was no mere moment of fear. It was a calculated decision to abandon another human being. Chante Mallard was convicted of murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison. She also received an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence by disposing of Gregory Biggs' body. For many, the sentencing brought some measure of justice, but for Biggs' family, the emotional scars would never heal. They had lost a son, a father, a brother, in the most senseless and horrific way possible. The public was left to grapple with a haunting question. How could someone show such a complete lack of empathy for another human being? How could Chante Mallard have driven away, knowing full well that Gregory Biggs was suffering? The case became a symbol of the darker side of human nature, a reminder that sometimes the greatest cruelty is indifference. The story of Chante Mallard and Gregory Biggs remains one of the most disturbing true crime cases in modern history. It wasn't just the hit and run itself that shocked the world. It was what followed. The apathy, the inhumanity, the casual cruelty of leaving another person to die when help was only a phone call away. What does this case tell us about morality and the choices we make? How do ordinary people commit such horrifying acts? It's a reminder of how fragile life is and how one person's indifference can change everything. If you found this story as unsettling as we did, make sure to subscribe for more real-life crime stories that will leave you questioning humanity. But until next time, remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we least expect.